Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for St. John's East.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je veux remercier le député de London Fanshawe pour avoir ouvert ce débat sur la motion 166 concernant une banque postale. La motion réclame la création d'un comité spécial chargé de tenir des audiences et de proposer un plan pour un système de banque postale. Même si le gouvernement n'a pas encore déterminé leur position là-dessus, je l'ai fait. Dans mon avis, cette motion doit être rejetée pour trois raisons, au moins. First, the future of Canada Post has been studied extensively in 2016, and the government has only just tabled its response, which does not include any specific recommendation on postal banking. There is already a committee of the House responsible for Canada Post, which is more than capable of addressing the topic, and third, the members of the OGO committee, at the insistence of the Liberal members of that committee, had the opportunity to review postal banking in depth and determined in Section 4.2 of its report 4 of this 42nd Parliament, that Canada Post should stick to its core competencies. As that report indicates, we believe in the future of Canada Post, just not necessarily as a bank. As the members may recall, the Minister of Public Services and Procurement announced on January 24th the new Service First vision for Canada Post, along with a number of immediate actions in support of that vision. Her announcement followed a comprehensive evidence-based review that included extensive public consultations with Canadians. An independent task force was established that met with unions, municipalities, postal experts, and other stakeholders. It studied international best practices, analyzed potential options, such as postal banking, and compiled this information into a discussion paper on our national postage system in the digital age, at a cost of approximately $2 million to taxpayers. Additionally, the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, of which I was a member, traveled across the country to hear directly from Canadians, communities, associations, unions, businesses, and individuals. We submitted a detailed report and made recommendations to the government. 22 days on the road at a cost of $500,000 to taxpayers. We also heard from other parliamentarians, whether through personal feedback or town halls they held in their own riding. Madam Speaker, we just completed this national conversation on Canada Post, which is quite comprehensive. The government listened to what was heard and carefully considered findings and recommendations. We heard that Canadians care deeply about Canada Post and its ability to provide the services that are within its core competency. Through this review, one thing became abundantly clear. The core value of Canada Post is a service that all Canadians enjoy and expect and appreciate. That is why the government's position is to renew Canada Post. Pour assurer la pertinence et la viabilité des Postes Canada à long terme et pour veiller à ce qu'elle continue d'offrir des emplois à la classe moyenne et des précieux services aux Canadiens. La nouvelle vision de mettre le service au premier plan a une importance fondamentale dans le renouvellement de cette institution emblématique. Elle ferait aussi en sorte que Post Canada offrira un service de grande qualité à prix raisonnable aux Canadiens, peu importe leur lieu de résidence. We also know that significant changes are needed to ensure the long-term relevance and financial stability of Canada Post. That is why, as part of the renewal, the government has asked Canada Post to embrace innovation, experimentation, and pilot projects to adopt best practices and address market trends, new technologies, and shifts in the needs and expectations of Canadians. And this digital transformation, which is occurring right now in the postal service industry, is also occurring in the banking industry. And it may be unreasonable to expect Canada Post, given its core competencies and the difficulties that it's happening in postal services, to then also try to innovate and develop and champion banking when there's already a very competitive and stable banking market within the country. We also expect Canada Post to explore partnership opportunities that could help the federal government and other jurisdictions leverage Canada Post's large retail network to provide access to government services, especially in rural and remote areas, and improve public services to Canadians. Comme je l'ai mentionné précédemment, le gouvernement a non seulement annoncé une nouvelle voie à suivre pour Post Canada, mais a aussi pris des mesures immédiates appuyant cette vision. Premièrement, Post Canada a mis fin de façon permanente au programme visant à remplacer la livraison du courriel à domicile par des boîtes postales communautaires. Il s'agit d'une promesse que nous avons faite aux Canadiens et nous l'avons respectée. Second, after listening to the concerns faced by seniors and others with mobility challenges vis-à-vis community mailboxes, Canada Post will develop an enhanced accessible delivery program. This program will improve service for tens of thousands of Canadians. A national advisory panel will include experts as well as Canadians with lived experience who will provide guidance on improving the existing program. Third, we have asked Canada Post to better promote its remittance services that are used by Canadians to send money overseas to support family members. Fourth, in line with renewed focus on service, the government will reclassify the Canada Post Corporation under the Financial Administration Act so that it can reinvest its profits into service and innovation. Finally, to fulfill the government's new vision, we need new leadership. The appointment of Jessica McDonald as chair of the Board of Directors is the first step. It is also part of a broader renewal of the board and wider change in leadership at Canada Post that will support greater collaboration, diversity, and broader perspectives. An improved relationship between labour and management at Canada Post is something that we heard of extensively in our consultations, and that will be a benefit not only to the organization itself, but also its morale and its ability to deliver services that Canadians deserve and expect. I see that my time is coming to an end, so let me just provide one brief quote from the task force, who went on to say, and I quote, "According to experts and stakeholders, Canada's financial environment is not conducive to the establishment and operation of full-scale postal banking. Postal banking is not likely to succeed in Canada as a result of the existence of a mature and competitive banking environment, as well as the extensive market coverage of not-for-profit credit unions in which more than 10 million Canadians have accounts." And so in closing, the government has already received important feedback from Canadians on postal banking. Oh, 3 minutes. Oh, sorry. My mistake. When I looked up at the clock and then I saw the speaker returning to the House, I assumed that my time was up. Well, let me provide another quote then that was provided by the task force as part of its review conducted public opinion research to gather feedback from Canadians, including on the issue of postal banking. And here are some of those findings. Some 60% of Canadian surveys think that having Canada Post open a bank that offers a complete line of banking services would be a poor fit with Canada Post business, versus 38% who believe the idea has potential. Among Canadians that seem to have liked the idea of postal banking, ultimately only 7% claim they would actually use postal banking services. Le Comité permanent des opérations gouvernementales et des prévisions budgétaires a lui aussi fait une analyse sur la banque postale. Il a conclu que 99% des Canadiens détiennent un compte bancaire et que la majorité d'entre eux, 55%, utilisent Internet pour effectuer la plupart de leurs opérations bancaires. Ce comité auquel j'étais membre s'est aussi penché sur la question de savoir si le Canada avait fait preuve de diligence raisonnable lorsqu'il avait examiné la possibilité de créer une banque postale, et nous avons conclu que la décision de Post Canada de ne pas aller avant avec cette solution était raisonnable. Le comité a plutôt recommandé que Post Canada se concentre sur les compétences principales pour aider le Canada à relever les défis du XXIe siècle. And so, Mr. President, it's just that, c'est juste de dire que la question d'une banque postale a fait l'objet d'un examen approprié et les Canadiens ont été largement consultés à ce sujet entre juin et novembre 2016. Est-il vraiment nécessaire de refaire ce travail avec presque les mêmes audiences et d'établir un comité contre le comité permanent qui existe déjà? Je ne pense pas. Canada Post has one of the largest retail networks in Canada, and in some communities, particularly in rural Canada, Canada Post is the only federal presence. But this does not mean that Canadians, even rural Canadians, don't have access to banking services, because they do. There are other ways, however, that the assets of Canada Post can be leveraged, and our committee recommended that it be leveraged in such a fashion to allow better access to public government services through these locations, and we think that this is a better fit. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that the new leadership at Canada Post be given sufficient time to implement our new service-first vision and consider innovative approaches to the long-term sustainability of Canada Post. And they should do this before Parliament undertakes another expensive, comprehensive review. Thank you, Mr. President.